He's going to hate this, but today's Bill Hogan's birthday.
Oh, that's right. Yes, it is. Bill Hogan's birthday. Yes. It was yesterday or the day before.
Where is he? I don't know.
Yeah.
Can't find him. I had to.
Can we have a picture on Zoom?
I had to.
That's awesome.
Yeah, they might not
Bill,
have the
I'm
Oh, there it
glad
is.
you're
There we
finally
are.
eligible
Good.
for Medicare.
Okay. Well, good to see you, Joe. I'm going to go over
Yeah.
to that
Oh,
now.
two
And,
quick things.
see you.
First of all,
You
See you
too.
next time.
Digital's picked
Stay
up
safe and good luck
Yeah,
on
thank you.
speaking.
You too.
on Arcona.
Okay,
I've
bye
sold
now.
routers all my life, and they make SDI 2110 multi-viewer routers all put together. If you're at all interested, let me know. That's a sales pitch. More importantly, Thomas Tang, we all know at Pantech, will be sponsoring a party on Monday at NAB at their booth. Free booze, come on by at 4:30. I just said come on by at 4:30, but you already cut me off beforehand, Annie.
That's Monday. Oh, good booth number.
Anybody wants the booth number, come and ask me.
Hey there, I'm Belinda from 12 Labs. And I just want to say, if you're going to NAB, you should come by and see me because broadcast news organizations are loving our AI tech. So come on by. We're in the West Hall.
Thanks, Belinda. All right. Anybody here? Jeff, you have any?
Text message from Cindy
So
Nelson.
if you're going to NAB, make sure you go to a Pantech for their Monday, 4:30 drinks? Make sure you go to 12 Labs in the West Hall. And while you're over at the West Hall, stop by Diversified. Diversified has Atlas Orchestrate, which is a pretty revolutionary product. It is integration in the cloud. So whereas most are having to subscribe to services in the cloud, we have a consumptive model, so you can spin up an event and spin it down. We can do all the development of what needs to be. Is my mic on? That was like the get off the stage cut, right? Stop by Diversify. We have cloud services. It's awesome.
Mike? All right, I will go this way. All right. Oh, here we go.
Hi, I'm Jeff. So I've been running Advantage Video Systems for 23 years, and I decided I want to look for something else. So if somebody has some opportunities and wants to talk to me about it, Jeff at AdvantageVideoSystems.com.
Fantastic. Thanks, Jeff. Any other takers have announcements or things coming up? All right. Hopefully we'll see everyone at NAB, or if everyone has been there many a times, it's still NAB. All right, I'm going to hand it off. Big hand of applause for Mobile TV Group. Yeah. All right. All yours.
Thank you very much. Ooh, it actually works. Nice. Well, as was mentioned, my name is Don McKinney, and I work for Mobile TV Group. If you guys know Mobile TV Group, you'll know that this is primarily what the company has been known for a long time. 53-foot expando trucks. We try and be state of the art and at the top end of the industry, and we're always trying to do things to be more progressive and continuing to push the industry forward. And my division is a part of that. We had lots of folks come to us over the years, emerging brands, new content creators, folks like that said, hey, I want to do this production. We don't have a lot of money. What options do you have for us? And fundamentally, this was the only option that we had. So because of that circumstance and some other developments in technology in the last few years, the Edge division was born. Again, I mentioned, Mobile TV Group, they certainly consider themselves one of the most progressive and forward-looking organizations involved in our technology today, not only in trying to build the best mobile units, but also we have another of other interesting ventures that are happening right now and some new partnerships that are coming online, things that you guys will be hearing about in the next 6 months to a year. So what is Edge? That's the reason I'm here to talk to you guys today. The original genesis of Edge, as I mentioned, was we had a lot of clients that were looking for a way to start production, some early content creators that were trying to build a brand that really couldn't afford the price point, of a 53-foot Expando. So the concept was to come up with a production system that incorporated all of the functionality of a mobile unit, or at least as close as we could get to that with the technology we had available today. So that would mean a multi-ME switcher, audio console with at least 8 audio boxes, 4-channel graphic system, true 8-in, 2-out replay, very similar to a Dreamcatcher or an EVS, the ability to shade 8 cameras, and a complement of multi-viewers, streaming, encoding, recording, all those other sorts of functions that you would expect to come across in a mobile unit. The Edge system and the Edge Advantage really sort of came about because of the nexus of a bunch of new computers that came online. GPU power in particular, very, very fast NVIM M.2 drives that allow you to do replay in a standard sort of desktop computer that you wouldn't have been able to do just a few years ago. So the combination of very fast CPUs, very fast GPUs, a new type of memory chip, and these really fast processors enabled us to take off-the-shelf equipment that's very specialized, but at the same time also off-the-shelf equipment, and then put in a suite of technology into those that allows us to do many of the same thing that a mobile unit would do. In addition to that, it gives you a lot of flexibility, and that's really a big part of what Edge is all about, is being able to flex up or flex down based on the size of your production. So you can see this is a very simple single-person setup, audio console, a couple of controllers, various different interfaces to see what's going on. But the advantage is if you have a simple show, a pre or post-game show or a video show or an interview show, you can operate it with one person. But at the same time, using the exact same equipment, we can expand that to have as many as 6 different positions. So one-man band operating a very simple show, or full production suite like you would see in a mobile unit. So director, producer, edge operator, which would be considered sort of a technical position like a TD, graphics, replay, audio, all those different positions can be sort of extended out from the Edge unit. So the same exact equipment is being used, but you add additional work positions for people to be able to do additional responsibilities. So that's sort of the basis of what Edge is. Very powerful computer. We run a variety of different software suites on it depending on the application, depending on the client, and then the ability to sort of flex up and flex down in the overall workflow and the work positions that the system is able to provide. So looking through these, this is a graphics position, for example, where we can make a custom desktop so that you can see all of the relevant graphics that might be in your show, or at least the most important ones. We have a full graphics suite that's part of the Edge system as well, and much like a Lyric or anything like that, it's message driven, and it can also be powered by Google Sheets or by Excel or by parsing data or any of the other options that are out there. So we certainly can take scoreboard data, things like that, have it parsed into the system, include those in the bug, systems like that. We operate with lots of folks that use their own graphic systems, and we can bring that in either as an NDI source, as a key and fill source, but at the same time for other folks that don't have a full graphics package, for example, because they're starting out as a new client, we're able to build them a representative package of elements that is adequate for their needs and get them started in the process of understanding even how graphics work, how they're populated, how they're powered by data, and how they're used in the production of TV. This would be a very simple replay system. As I mentioned, the Edge system does have an 8-in, 2-out replay capability, so 8 cameras in, 2 cameras out. That can also be operated by a single person, or we can break it out into a full position like this, where it's similar to working at an LSM for an EVS or a Dreamcatcher. Full, 8-in, 2-channel capability, the ability to switch back and forth between, the outputs, red or blue or silver and gold. And in fact, we just got back from doing some spring training in Arizona. We've done a number of MLB events out there, and they've even gotten to the point now where they've embraced our replay system. And the last game that we did for the Giants and the Rangers was done on a complete Edge system using our own replay system. So a lot of change happening in our organizations, in our companies, in our business. And although full-size 53 expander mobile units are never going to go away, nor are you ever going to replace the ability of, having 15 or 20 people independently working towards a communal goal. I mean, that's a tremendously powerful package, to bring to a production. At the same time, this is a really great way to sort of build a brand, grow an organization, start out with someone new that hasn't had a chance to develop lots and lots of sponsors. One example of that for us was pickleball. Pickleball came on really strong a couple of years ago. We started with a number of pickleball organizations. When we started, they really didn't have anybody that had ever worked in a TV truck. They didn't understand a lot of the concepts, even the terminology. So we went from having only a single sponsor for the first few events. I think by the end of the second year, they had 400 sponsors, and now they have more sponsors than they know what to do with. Frankly, more money than they know what to do with. But that's an opportunity for you to grow your brand, to start out with a very modest budget, to stream a ton, gain interest from CBS, from ESPN, eventually get cut downs of your production put onto CBS and ESPN, and that evolves over time. You grow more sponsorships. At a certain point, you can actually afford a mobile unit and a larger crew. You expand your production. You increase the number of features and elements that you're doing, and over time, it becomes kind of a hand-in-glove relationship for us where people graduate. We actually have graduates that start off on the Edge system, get to a point where they're actually able to transition to a full mobile unit. So it's an interesting project for us in that it allows us to keep some clients that were sort of at a different price point than most of our business, but then at the same time help those people to grow, build a brand, build an organization, and then help them to sort of expand their reach and move into a more formal TV production environment. These days there's lots of streamers out there, there's lots of different technology. A lot of people can go out and buy a computer and a few pieces of software and think that they can make TV. It's like saying that you can grab a microphone and a guitar and say that you can make music. Maybe you can, but probably really bad music. So we do a lot of the heavy lifting for you too. Folks will come out, and it's one thing to have a box that can stream or track audio or play things. At the same time, there's a lot of different, as we all know, there's a lot of things that is the difference between making good TV and making bad TV. So intercom system is incredibly important. If the comms are bad, everything's bad. Same thing, being able to provide a tally, shading, all of the different things that you would take for granted in a full-size mobile unit. But if you're someone that's just starting in this industry and you're a streamer or someone like that, there's a ton of these different technologies and support elements that you need to really make good quality TV that are also very challenging to learn and understand. For Edge, we use many, many, many different types of cameras, for example, from Grass Valley and Sony production cameras, lots of different type of Blackmagic cameras, PTZs, small form box frame cameras, all those different types of things. And to have a comprehensive tally system, for example, across all of those different types of cameras can be very, very challenging. So again, there's 10,000 products out there that do tally, and 9,980 of them are terrible. And a few of them are pretty good. So, one of the advantages of coming to us is that we've already gone out, we've already proven the technology that works in the computer. We've already made sure that you have the correct types of drives and software and everything else. But then we've also gone through the entire, gamut of equipment that you're going to need to be able to produce TV. And we show up ready to go with things that are turnkey, so that you don't necessarily need to have all that intimate knowledge of all these different devices. We show up and it's fundamentally production as a service. So as I mentioned recently, we just got back from doing Major League Baseball in Arizona. I think I've been to almost every ballpark in Arizona now, and there's a ton of them. Sloan, Talking Stick, Camelback, Goodyear. It's amazing, how many ballparks there are in Arizona and also in Florida. And we've sort of been moving our way through all of those, both as part of the Arizona Fall League. So I've done things for Chuck Fox with Arizona Fall League. We've done Home Run Derby. We recently did some college championship headers that were taking place in Arizona as well. Incredible game with Vanderbilt and an unbelievably terrible game with San Diego State. My alma mater, sorry. But just a great opportunity to go to a lot of different venues and experiment and iterate on what the Edge system is and how it works, culminating with our most recent adventure at Scottsdale, where if you went there with a mobile unit, exact same sort of thing. We had to home run all of our cables. There's really very little infrastructure available there. So, several thousand-foot tacks, center field, third base, home base, and then first base up to the TV booth. So Edge, as I've sort of described here, fundamentally there's no mobile unit, right? It's a fly pack solution. Depending on the components that are included in your production package, it could be anywhere from 1 pallet up to 3 pallets. And we ship those sorts of things in. And again, as I mentioned, there's no real need for production truck functionality. We've been in swamps in Florida where there was many inches of rain flowing through the tent in the course of our productions, and water moccasins were being killed right outside our tent and things like that, and had a few interesting interactions with some alligators. But really a part of this is being able to go to not TV-ready venues that are not, they don't have a truck pad, there's no tri-phase, none of those sorts of things. And a lot of our early clients were that sort of way too, where we showed up with a generator, we were doing bonded cellular, every imaginable type of transmission you can think of, we've done at one point or another. So specializing at a very modest price point, coming in and bringing everything that you need to be able to produce television to venues that fundamentally were never designed for or never really even considered for TV production. Sort of the world where Edge tends to live most of its life. MLB has been an exception to that. NBA has also been an exception to that. I didn't really think that we would be moving into sort of tier 1 sports as quickly as we have. But even in those organizations that have tremendous resource and seemingly all the money in the world, there are still use cases that they have found Edge to be very, very helpful for. I've done a whole bunch of Adam Silver press conferences, which you wouldn't think that he would use a system like this for something of that magnitude. Nevertheless, a lot of times they will simply run out of space, where they'll have 8 or 10 truck organizations parked out in the loading dock, and they just don't have space for yet another satellite truck and another small MU to be able to do a 3-camera interview with Adam Silver. So that's how we originally started doing productions for them. They really ran out of space at one of the NBA finals, and we came in and did the very first one for them, and we've done many now, IST, all the various different events that they hold up. And mostly it's for the exact same reason. It's not really a question of saving money, it's a question of saving space and time. And it's one of the weirder productions I've ever done, because it is literally the simplest thing you're ever going to do as a TD or as an operator, yet it's the most complex and daunting thing you're ever going to do as a TD and operator. It's 3 cameras, a couple of cutaways, but everybody from the NBA staff is there. You're feeding all of these different affiliates. So it's this incredibly simple thing that becomes incredibly complicated. At the same time, there's this concept of simple is complex and complex is simple. We've also done high school championship football in Texas, which anybody who's been to Texas knows that high school football in Texas is like college or practically pro Texas anywhere else. Nevertheless, there we were doing 11 cameras, 16 channels of embedded audio. It was very complex shows, all the bands, all the referees, every microphone, all the different things that you would expect. At the same time, after we had built all of these shows, we saved everything into the configs and into the preset file, and they're able to just recall that every single week. And it's not like having to push a brand new mobile unit up and patch everything back in. So we had this very complicated show, but really the fundamentals of the engineering of it were saved into the file, and we were able to bring those back every single week and restore those complicated engineering files very quickly. So, a simple thing like the NBA press conference from Adam Silver becomes very, very complicated, but at the same time, something very complicated like championship football also becomes fundamentally very simple because of our ability to sort of save those states and preserve that engineering for the future. Also means that you can switch between shows very, very quickly. You can finish a live broadcast and immediately change over to a pre- and post-game show or an interview show in just a few moments. It's really good for venues that do a tremendous amount of volume. This is a great way to save a ton of money. These are more pictures from our sports production this last week in Arizona. You can see our talent, of course, up there with their on-color shot, and then below, this is an actual picture of TV booth number 2. So talent was next door in TV booth number 1. We were in TV booth number 3, and you can see it's fairly straightforward. Director, producer in the right front, talent's to his right, Edge up in the center, replay up to the left, and in the back row we have a shader and we have a TVG 2-channel bug op. So, the environment of what Edge, provides is very similar to any other control room that you would encounter. The positions are the same, the equipment is fundamentally the same, the jobs are very much the same. Most of the time when we go into these environments, we use the local crewers, PPI or Brook Brothers or whoever, and are just using industry standard union people from the local markets. And as we continue to expand this, we'll also be training edge operators and replay operators and everyone else to be able to use this, because the idea is for us to use local folks in markets. And if we can focus on markets like Arizona and Florida, where there's a lot of different venues where they're producing this sort of TV, we think that we can also grow a local cadre of people that are very familiar with the systems and be able to get them enough repetitions to be able to use them as local operators for the system. Something we're working on right now, as a matter of fact, especially in Arizona. This is, as I mentioned earlier before, Texas high school football, 8 to 11 cameras depending on the game, 2 long lenses, 2 72 by cameras, 16 channels of embedded audio, 8 input replay, 4 channels of external graphics. They had both a lyric and they also had, I think, a Bally's box on their events. One thing that I haven't mentioned up to this point, but the system itself also has an integrated telestrator. If any of you have ever worked with a telestrator, you know the telestrators could be $15,000 or $20,000 just for that piece of equipment alone. So being able to just use an edge system as a telestrator is actually a fundamental huge cost savings. Being able to use the edge system as just a replay device or a graphics device, also a huge cost savings. Being able to fold all of these things together into one production means that you can get that price point down to a much lower place than you would ever be able to touch with a mobile unit. And of course, live data too. We've done a ton of different sports where the data was run from Google Sheets. We had people that were producers or associate producers or BAs and PAs that were in many different states that were all contributing data and information to those Google Sheets that we're then using live out of Sloan or somewhere else. So a big part of the edge system in its initial development was also sort of remote contribution, the ability of having talent or producers or directors or someone else dislocated from where the main production's happening, but participating in that production. So when I worked for the Pac-12, part of the initial development of this was during COVID. And of course, that continues through all of our most recent iterations. So being able to contribute or have someone part of the show that's remote, big part of our development. Being able to have someone who's a producer or an associate producer or even a director work remotely, also definitely part of the deal. And of course, we work in all different environments. So 100% on-prem, up in the cloud, or as a true REMI, where we just have sort of the cameras and audio on site, and we're sending all of that stuff back and then controlling it from our production control rooms in Colorado. So a true mixed bag. I think we thought initially that we would do more sort of hybrid events, but a lot of our early clients, again, these not TV-ready environments that have very limited connectivity made, sending back stems and things like that very, very hard. So a lot of our clients have taken advantage of the edge concept, right? So the edge, where you actually put the heavy lifting, the computer to do all of the hard lifting work, and then the only thing that you're sending back is your finished product. So limited electrical requirements, limited transmission requirements, really sort of doing all of the heavy lifting on site and then just sending back that finished product through a very modest transmission source. Mentioned pickleball. We did lots of interesting pickleball events, and these were super long production days. They were typically 4 days long. There was 750 to 1,000 participants in each one of the events that would get whittled down till the final Sunday gold matches where the people that were really, really good at pickleball played. Nevertheless, tons of different weird, every imaginable venue you can think of across the US, from amazing ones like the Billie Jean Tennis Center in New York, which is incredible, but also lots of places in Dripping Springs, Florida, and St. Louis, and other parts of the southern states that typically had lots of bugs and were very wet. Nevertheless, great opportunity for us to continue to iterate on the edge system. We learned a ton in doing all of these unique and interesting venues with the folks from APP, and that was a great evolution of the system. We learned a ton and really got a chance to push the technology a lot further than we had before this. This was actually part of the reason that we've moved to Dante for a lot of our comm systems and a lot of the other audio handling that we do. But this was a great opportunity for us to really kind of get down in the mud with people that were growing a brand and trying to build a business, and then sort of learn with them. And that 1.5 to 2 years was really amazing, and being able to do a lot of different things with the edge system I'd never dreamed of doing in the past. At the same time, lightweight but powerful. The upper picture is, I believe this was actually a Texas Rangers pre and post game show that we did. This was back when we were starting out with them for championship football. This was something that they wanted to experiment with, and we did a lot of side-by-side productions with them. Much in the same way that we can go out in the field and do events, there's a lot of overflow events that happen for folks too, where they have 2 production studios, they have 2 control rooms, but they have just way more events than they can handle. And in this particular case, the upper picture, that was just a storage room. Those are all folding tables. We came in, we did a 1-day set. I did a couple of hours of training with each one of their people. They more or less sat down in positions that they were familiar with equipment that they were familiar with, and they were able to do most of their own broadcasts. We mirrored a couple of them back and forth where they were doing them in one control room and studio while we were doing them in another, but they adapted to it very quickly and started doing a lot of different productions using that. The bottom picture is actually another picture from Bally's where he was cutting, he was shadowing a game they were doing next door in their main control room on an edge system, actually doing live basketball. And of course, Flow Sports, we've done a variety of different events for them. Most recently, we did the ADCC Worlds in Las Vegas at T-Mobile. That was 5 simultaneous events, so 3 mats on the floor. Each mat is its own production with replay, graphics, talents, comms, all of the above. Each one of those doing its own show, streaming it out live. At the same time, we also had one of our mobile units there, so all of those 3 edge systems were contributing into the mobile unit that was doing a wraparound Red Zone show. And then we had a 4th edge unit that was actually doing an alt of the Red Zone show in Portuguese, because Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is huge in Portugal, so we did an alt feed with their own set of talent, and even brought their set of talent down to the finals to be on the main mat when we were doing the finals at the end of the event. So overflow events and mixed venues where we're combining edge units with mobile units is also something that's come on. We have a couple other interesting ones here in the near future coming up too. Same sort of scenario where a lot of gaming events where they want to have 7 or 10 simultaneous productions that are all feeding into a larger production. If you had 6 or 7 or 10 mobile units, you can imagine what the cost would be as opposed to using some of our edge units with a single mobile unit. A lot of cost savings to be had there. These are just examples of some of the press conferences I've done for Adam Silver. Again, one of the unique things about this system is it's very much plug and play. You can plug it in pretty much anywhere. We only need 120 volt standard shore power. So we've been in like portable trailers that were outside of the truck dock. In some cases, we've been on tables that were next to the truck dock. We were doing associated videos and things like that. We've been in the press conference room in the very back corner. We were even in a bathroom one time adjacent to the press conference room. So this is a system that can be, put together very, very quickly in a very short period of time, practically anywhere. And we do excel in locations that are not TV friendly, let's just say. Here's a couple of different examples, edge working anywhere. In the center picture, you can see this is the ADCC Worlds, where we had the travel trailer directly next to our mobile unit. The upper picture is actually the center of the travel trailer, which was their sort of broadcast hub where they had all of their bonded cellular and they were monitoring all of their streams. In addition to that, you can see on the left side there is one of our edge units. And then the picture to the right is actually another edge unit. So it was a 3-office trailer, and there's an edge unit in each end, and then an edge unit in the center with their broadcast streaming folks. And the bottom 2 pictures, the left one is actually the truck dock at DU. So we were set up to do a pre and post game show while the mobile unit was doing some hockey. And then the right one, I think this was also another very early one that we did at Bally's in Texas, where we had set up literally in a storage room and we're doing shows out of there. So very much the idea that edge works anywhere. It doesn't need to be prepared for TV. It doesn't even have to be, ever have TV done at it. This thing's very self-contained, and we typically ship it with everything that you would need to be able to do a show. And that sometimes even includes localized UPS for various venues where we've had a few that had some challenges, and even on generator power, we were struck by electricity one time and the generator went out. So we had multiple individual UPS systems, one at the edge system, one at each one of the cameras. So we were able to sustain our operations and even actually kept broadcasting on bonded cellular while the power was out in the venue. Doesn't always work. Inevitably, there's always something plugged into something crucial inside. So, you have 50% of your production train and some portion of it that's critical drops off. But nevertheless, this is a very quick, fast, lightweight, and easy system to deploy and to maintain that still has a tremendous amount of power in it and a lot of versatility to be used in many different ways. Let's see if I can get this to play. So this is the ADCC Worlds. And you can see the upper upper two screens on the bottom left screen are the individual mats. And then you can see on the right side where they were folding those 3 individual mats into a triple box. And this was one of the monitors that was actually in the mobile unit, where they're moving between the various matches depending on the most interesting match that's happening at the time. This is another event that went on 3 days. First day was children's, the second day was adults semifinals, and the third day was the worlds. So lots and lots and lots of competitors, 14-hour days. But at the same time, being able to have those 3 mats being produced by Edge Systems, feeding into a main mobile unit, cut their budget, you know, by 4/5. So huge monetary savings in terms for them. And the ability for them to be able to do simultaneous matches all day long was also critical for them to be able to get all the matches they needed to in 3 days completed. Let's see if I can move on to the next thing here. So this is what this is what one of the Edge units looked like inside of the trailer. This is the one on the far right-hand side. So you can see there's a producer working with an Edge operator. The Edge operator is keying in all of the lower thirds. Now, granted, in this sort of match, we had modest lower thirds. There was a few full-screen graphics that were promoting matches that were coming up, and typically the lower thirds of each one of the components, or each one of the opponents, rather. But this operator is trimming audio, is doing replays, is doing match startups, all those sorts of things. Obviously working with a pair of talent. And you can see his little audio board right there has flying faders, so whatever is happening in the software is actually replicated in those faders and vice versa. If you adjust the faders, it adjusts the software. If you adjust the software, it adjusts the faders. So this is how you can, you know, take a workstation and put a single person at it and produce a TV show. Now, granted, you have to do a lot of the handling of the functions of this person in order to make it a streamlined and efficient operation. So all of our systems, super servers, smaller servers, they come in many different sizes and formats. They all have a variety of different pieces of equipment in there. Most of the time, those would be operated individually, you know, Behringer stage boxes, all those different types of things. We've written a software layer that goes over top of all of those things. So not only can you have a controller that will control specific things, cut cameras and stuff like that, but you can also have MIDI devices that can take inputs from many different sources and control many different sources at the same time. So the audio board might have gains that are affecting the software, while the faders are actually affecting the software that's part of the Behringer stage box. As far as the operator is concerned, though, it doesn't matter. You're still, you know, operating your controls, and it's operating things natively in the background without you even being aware of it. And then, of course, we do automation without automation. And what is that? For example, if you preset an open and you dissolve to that open, the input itself knows that it has to turn on the audio source for that open music. It has to set it at a particular level. When you are finished with that and you dissolve away from the open, it knows that it has to fade out the open in 3 seconds down to a particular level and turn that audio source off. There's a tremendous amount of handling that happens with a lot of the things that are taking place in the Edge system because we've customized those functions to happen, you know, ahead of time completely automatically. And that's how, as an operator, you're able to do 10 things at the same time. You know, how do you track your audio, track your nats, make sure that the bat pops are correct and all these different things. It's because we've worked with a lot of different softwares and we've combined those together into form factors that are easy for you to manipulate, and a lot of that manipulation happens in the background. So it's one way that we take very complex roles and then sort of simplify them. But at the same time, you still have the ability to adjust those audio levels at any time. You're not really restricted in being able to make adjustments whenever you want to. See if I can get onto this next one here. Here we go. So this was just this last week. I don't know if you can hear this or not, but as far as, you know, what is the room like when you're doing a show? So we have a little picture-in-picture window here that's actually showing the plays, which you can also see in the monitor in the upper left-hand corner. But it's very much like any other control room. The producer's saying, ready 1-1, ready 2-2. You know, do you have that batter font? Font in, font out. Let's get some love to the on-deck batter. Take a picture of him, drop down at the bug. Great, follow the action, replays, all those sorts of things. So, I mean, as far as walking into this space, you really wouldn't know that it wasn't the control room that they streamed out of every week. You know, the Edge server, believe it or not, is in that space. You can barely see it in the upper left-hand corner with a sheet of paper sitting on it. But that is the super server right there that allows all of these positions to operate. Again, we could operate it with just one person, or you can do it with a full production crew, depending on the requirements for your particular production. Get on to the next thing here. These are a bunch of replay sequences, which I'm not necessarily sure are easy to see and understand. But the same sort of thing, when you say, okay, well, how do you use replay? The operators that I use are all veteran EVS or Dreamcatcher replay operators, and it's very much the same thing. If you were an RO working in a truck, they would expect 2 looks from you. So you'd want to see the batter's face for the swing, and then you'd want to see camera 2, the high home camera, most of the time. And then the ability to move back and forth between those, and even in some cases, you go from your primary channel to your secondary channel and even get a third look of the person crossing home bait or something like that. So replay fundamentally in this system is the same as working a replay of any other device. It's really not all that different. As the operator, you affect to the timeline just like you would in EVS, so you're not restricted by having an in point or an out point. You can let it go as long as you want to see the reaction of the ref or the reaction of players. At the same point, you have all the same functionality. You can tag things, there's meta tags, there's lots of different bins, way to do rollouts. And of course, we can output a melt at the end of the night. Hold on. There we go. We talked about graphics and data and graphics. This is a very complicated graphic sheet that we use. The AFL has, spring training and AFL, AAA, AA, low A, all those different, organizations. In this particular case, they would have the primary team logo that they were playing on, so they were the Peoria Javelinas or one of the other, the Solar Sox, but they also had an affiliation. They were from, the Rangers, or they were from the White Sox or whoever. So you can see in this, you can make very complicated graphic elements. On the right side, you would pick the main team logo for the team that they were on. Next to that, there's a drop-down menu for the team's affiliation. And then, of course, the information that's included in the lower thirds is simply typed in there. So we can take complicated things like logos and make them into drop-downs so that you can select through them very, very quickly. We can also make global sheet changes so that at the beginning of the day, you can pick your 2 particular teams, and all of the colors, all of the flags, all of the emblems, all of the logos that exist everywhere in the graphics package all change at the same time. So they all switch over to the Javelinas or the Peoria Solar Sox or whatever. So this is a very simple way to power graphics in a way that's very comprehensive. You can see across the bottom, this particular graphics package has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 different graphics, and they're all powered by this sheet. It's actually a unique and interesting way to build graphics ahead of time, and it means that you don't necessarily have to have someone who's an expert in Lyric or an expert in any of those other systems to be able to create powerful and interesting graphics for use in shows. So this is another way that we can simplify the operation and reduce your price point so that some of the folks that may be doing your graphics aren't necessarily experts, but rather BAs, PAs that are just operating the Google Sheet. Happens all the time. This is sort of a quick look at the overall production. Sort of all the positions are kind of arrayed out at the top there, and then of course down here at the bottom it says Edge Operator, Camera Shader. This had 4 live camera ops in it, an A2 utility, an Edge Graphics Operator, a Replay Operator, and a Tech Manager. So at the higher end of production, I mean, we more or less add in many of the same roles and positions that you would normally have in a mobile unit, but at the same time, some of those positions are modified, some of those positions are crossover, and it's a way that we can reduce the overall footprint of the number of people that you're having work the event, but at the same time produce all the same things that you would have been doing if you were doing it at a mobile unit, just at a lower price point. So what does Edge look like when it ships to you? Pretty much it looks like that. It looks like a bunch of Pelican cases. For the smaller events, like for the Adam Silver press conferences, it's 1 small pallet. For medium-sized events, pickleball and things like that, it's 2 pallets. Once you get into 72 by lenses, that's when you end up being 3 pallets. 2 72 by lenses, a couple of pan heads, a couple of MT1 heavy tripods. I mean, that alone is a pallet all by itself. So like with anything, there's always kind of an upper limit that you reach, right? And certainly long lenses and the accompaniment of lenses is one of those things that at a certain point you'll make the production so large that it starts to make sense to move into a mobile unit, right? So once you've added 6 long lens cameras or something along those lines, you end up shipping around so much gear and it takes so much to support the production that it monetarily starts to make sense to move into a mobile unit, or for you to take a real strong look at your production, if you can't afford that, and make some creative decisions as how you compare things back to the point where it does make sense for your budget and you still achieve all of the production goals that you have set forward. So a little bit of conversion theory happening in some of these moments. This actually just has a little teeny picture of the telestrator down there. The telestrator can be any device. It could be a small iPad, a larger iPad, or even like in the FingerWorks, we've used the full-on touch screen monitor systems that work really, really well. But it doesn't really matter. Anything that can hit the web can hit the page within the system that adds all of those little graphics, and we can create any kind of graphic you want. There's an editor on there, so if you want something that looks like they're being beamed in and out, or numbers or zigzags, or we can make anything, any kind of design or any kind of shape, and add it to the repertoire of items that are contained within this system. So what you would be paying a ton of money for from other vendors, frankly, we include for free. And that's pretty much the nuts and the bolts. As far as, I was curious if you guys had any questions or anything specific that you had interested in terms of Edge, because I think probably the vast majority of the people that are in here have either been studio or mobile unit sort of place, I guess you would say. And again, while I don't think there's any chance that mobile units are going to go anywhere anytime soon, I do think that software-driven production applications are going to be increasing over time. AI is certainly going to influence that. But like anything else, AI is another one of those things that chases the bald referee around the pitch when they're playing soccer and other things like that. So all of these new technologies have a tremendous amount of growing pains that need to be dealt with and adjusted over time. And Edge is a similar sort of thing. We've grown over the course of now coming up on 4 years. We've done several thousand productions at this point. And when I look at the growth over time, where we were when I first started for MTVG and where I am now, how far it's come. And did I ever think that we'd be using it for professional sports? No, it never occurred to me. But they have the same use cases as anybody else. They have overflow where they just can't get to all the places that they need to. And certainly for spring training, there are so many events that take place on the same days, even in the same cities, where we had 5 or 6 games going on 15 minutes apart in Arizona for 4 days straight. It was crazy, just so much production happening. But as we move into this new world, there are a lot more content creators that don't have the budgets, but do have interesting content. And now with the fractured delivery formats that we have now, there's so many things, beyond just linear TV, so many different streaming platforms, so many other venues for people to consume content. We think this is a very powerful way to expand that production over time and allow those people to continue to grow their brand until they actually can transform and move into a full-size mobile unit. So with that in mind, any questions? Any random interesting questions?
Wait for the mic, please.
Hi, that server in the rack there, is that Windows based or the?
It is Windows based. Yep.
How reliable is it? Does it lock up on you in the middle of a production? How's the reliability of that?
It's extremely good. We've never had a production taken off the air because of a failure of one of our boxes. We have had 1 or 2 that we've chosen to reboot in commercial breaks over the years, many, many years now.
That's what I'm wondering. If that thing locks up, you lose everything, right? That one server in that
That's true.
rack.
That is true, and that's a concern. It's a concern in a number of directions. Now, it's fundamentally, out of the thousands of events that we've done and the thousands and thousands of days of production that we've done, it's extraordinarily limited. So is it a possibility? Yes. Is it a possibility that, your switcher might lock up or you might have a problem? It's a very small possibility. But, I was a TD for years and years and years, and I was in mobile units when, ME1 started to smoke, and, you say to the director, hey, ME1 smoking, and the response would be, don't use ME1. Same sort of thing. I mean, even with mobile units these days, they had a Game Creek truck where the generator exploded like a week ago. I mean, weird things do happen. Inevitably, we try and have something in the chain that would allow you to continue the broadcast in the time that it would take you to reboot. So whether it's a bonded cellular device or something at the receiver end or whatever, in the case of something failing, they'd be able to put a slate up or put something up to give you enough time to be able to reboot. All the solid state drives that we use to reboot Windows is like a 27-second process. And the way that we wrote all the code in all of the drivers and the software means that when you do reboot and you bring that software back up, the same camera you had online will be online before. It will turn back all of the externals that were on before and all the audio sources that are on before. So when the computer boots back up again, it will literally be in the exact same state that it was right before it had whatever the issue was. Now, again, I've been working with this system now 3 years for MTVG and about 2.5 years before that at the Pac-12, and we've never had one take us off the air.
That's good.
So it's
Windows 10 or Windows 11 or?
Oh, this started way back when it was still Windows XP and Windows Vista. We've gone through all of those, and we're now all on Windows 11 at this point. Well, we might have 1 or 2 Windows 10 boxes, but the vast majority of them are Windows 11.
Okay, thank you.
It's a topic that is brought up, but it's one of those things that is incredibly infrequent. It really, really, really is surprisingly low in its frequency. In fact, the number is 0. Will it happen someday? I'm sure it will, but it hasn't yet.
For the bonded cellular, do you always use that as your transmission element? And whose bonded cellular are you, what vendor?
We've used, literally everything. And it's not necessarily, it's typically the client that makes those sorts of decisions. MTVG as a company would normally say, we produce right up until it leaves the truck, and then how it gets to wherever it goes is your issue. And we've sort of maintained that to a certain degree with the edge systems. Most of the time, like for all the stuff that we do for baseball, normally it's their in-house, wired internet. All of these, Sloan, all of them, even Scottsdale, that has very little infrastructure whatsoever, still had extraordinarily good internet. But for pickleball and stuff like that now, we used TVUs, we used privately purchased bonded cellular, we used, every imaginable form out there at one time or the other. And often we would use layered versions too, where we would have, there'd be 2 or 3 TVU 800s, but on top of that, we'd have another solution. And on top of that, there'd be, some Elon Musk action happening outside. Every possible version of everything, it seems like at this point, has come across the table from one client or another. And it's just a question of how many layers do they want. We've had some folks that wanted, 3 or 4 backups. Kind of the same thing with NBA too. It's like the number of backups that you would have for that press conference blows my mind. You have 3 or 4 powered cameras that are going SMPTE out to a mobile unit. At the same time, we would have 1 or 2 local cameras in both directions that were station power on backup UPSs that had internal chips that had completely separate audio that were recording internally. I can't imagine how we would have ever actually used that in the course of producing an Adam Silver press conference. But if we were hit by a meteor, we would still have whatever he said on camera recorded into these cameras. But at the same time, sometimes the layers seem like they get to be a bit much.
So on that Elon Musk thing, how many people were fired?
Yeah.
No, so one of the things that we were talking at our table, and I've been involved in the big, is esports. And so, your trailers have a lot, can do a lot with esports. And I wanted, if you maybe talk about, if you do esports, and if you do, talk about it. Because like esports, you can have a 12 team that can have almost 40 to 50 streams of video.
Yeah, it's actually something we're talking with a couple clients right now. We're actually weirdly bidding sort of 2 sides of the same event through 2 different clients. But it's the same sort of scenario. The idea that you would have 1 or 2 or 3 cameras on each set of competitors. You would have a screen capture of their gameplay dynamic. Then all of that would go together into a single production unit, including lower thirds and stuff like that. So it's very compelling, I think, from gamers, where you could still do the same thing with a mobile unit, but the price point would get exponential as you go, as opposed to using edge units. For a lot of these things with 2 or 3 or 4 cameras that are NDI based with a screen capture with a couple of talent, that together with a laptop and set up how many do you want? You want 30? You want 50? And then composite those all together into combined streams or into a mobile unit. So I think one of the biggest advantages that we have is that we can provide a ton of production operation in a very small footprint, especially for something like gaming when the density of that can be very, very high. But at the same time, we can still take up to 1,000 inputs. So, however many streams you want to run into it, we're probably able to carry it. It's really more a question of organizing over time. When you get to those really large events, how do you handle, 50 or 60 or 80 different streams?
Thank you. you showed the picture of the pallet of equipment that shows up. Do you ship like an engineer on one of those pallets to reassemble it all and stuff, or how do you do that? Do you send somebody out to put it all together, or what happens?
Most of the time, we ship someone out. So there's a lot of different versions of this, right? There are individual events where we can ship out. I mean, we'll do everything soup to nuts, right? So for the AFL in Arizona, they have so much going on. They want you to do complete soup to nuts production, right? So they don't really want to be involved at all. They want you to show up. They want you to bring your producers. They want you to have talent. You know, everything that you can imagine, we take care of from beginning to end. At the same time, we also have lots of other versions of those. We have facilities where the equipment is permanently installed, and we've trained their people to run it. So the only time they come to me is when they want a new effect built or something unique, and they don't know how to do that, so I log in and I do it remotely. So there's a lot of different ways to slice that. We'll rent it to you for a single event for one day or for a week, but we also do monthly pricing and yearly pricing. So if you have a venue that's doing, 3, 4, 5, events a week, we'll come in there and we'll set up a system. And after you've done your third event, from a technology point of view, your technology costs are zero for the rest of the month. Now, granted, you still have to pay your operators, but if you parked a mobile unit there for a month, the bill would be much, much, much higher. But the advantage to us is that we can run that system monthly or yearly. If you're going to use it for 8 months and not 4 months, we can turn it off and you can turn it back on when you're ready. And at the same time, you have 100% support. So we can send someone out that can operate it totally for you, put it all together, take it all apart, or we're happy to train your people to do all those sorts of things too. So all of the above.
Yeah, I was curious about the resolution support. So are you 3G, 6G? What's your plan for the future? What do you support now, and what do you anticipate supporting in terms of ultimate delivery format?
We're 1080p 5994 or any other format that you want. We can stream out to 5 different locations simultaneously while doing 8 and 2 out record, while doing 3 local records internally to the box at the same time. So as far as bandwidth inside the box, that's not a problem whatsoever. All of them have a 10 gig NIC, so we can pump a lot into and out of them. All of them at a minimum have a AGA Corvid 88 card, so that's 8 bidirectional SDI, HD SDI inputs and outputs. So we're very forward thinking in terms of the technology that we choose and that we use. Some of our newest units even have Wi-Fi integration on them so that we can use Wi-Fi directly into the servers without having to use secondary pieces of equipment to log that in. SMPTE 2110 has been a topic. Can we do native SMPTE 2110 encoding directly out of the box for the NFL is a popular topic right now. Oh yeah, 4K. I mean, we can certainly do 4K. Now, keep in mind resources are finite, right? So if you radically up the amount of resolution that you're doing in it, it does change how the software and the hardware handles it. So for example, we can do super slow-mo, but you can only do 2 super slow-mos per system because it uses up all the available resources of the HDSDI, would have of 8 individual cameras, right? Same sort of scenario. So we can also do center cut, horizontal cut, if you want to do formats specifically for Facebook or things like that. I mean, I think the suite of options that you have in terms of capture and broadcast is much, much, much more broad in this system than it would be in any mobile unit you've ever encountered.
In terms of audio processing, we'll accept some different level differences or something in picture, but audio level and the commentators and the roll-ins and what audio processing are you using for level control, because you really don't have a audio operator as such.
We do on shows that require them. So I mean, we do have audio panels that we connect. When we did the championship football, with 16 embedded channels, we had a full-size audio console hooked up. Everything was de-embedded into individual faders. He ran it 100% manually. There was no automation of any elements in the show. So we can totally go there if you want to go there too, or any mix of the above. All of our systems, so there's sort of like a baseline configuration that's included in all of them. They all typically have an XAir 18 in them. So the Behringer software and the XR software itself is available, and that can also be MIDI controlled too. So it does have the option for, you know, a full array of equalizing and various other formats to be able to handle the audio if you want to do, you know, Dugan Auto Tune or any of those sorts of things. At the same time, our audience, until very recently, stereo output was really sort of the maximum goal, right? So HDR has started becoming a topic. 4K has been a topic for some time. I've yet to have anyone come to me and say, I want to do 3.1 or I want to do 5.1. That has not happened yet. Will it happen? I don't know. You know, that's a big hurdle to jump over in terms of production equipment and responsibilities in terms of just a stereo show. So I don't know. But on the other hand, I never thought that I'd be doing Adam Silver stuff, and I never thought that I'd be doing, you know, spring training for the Giants and for the Rangers. So one of the advantages of this is that people come to us all the time and say, hey, can you do this? And be like, sure, we'll just build another box and we'll put that in it, you know? So it's not like, you know, well, you're gonna get, the answer is always yes, you know, and that's the thing about this is that, you know, it doesn't take a year to build, you know, it doesn't take $1 million to build, you know, and we can iterate on it very, very quickly and try something completely different at a very low cost point, especially when we have a whole, you know, there's a lot of these things running around in our building now. So reconfiguring them, switching them around, you know, that's experimentation that happens very natively with the folks downstairs. So constant evolution. We're actually trying to use one of these systems right now for remote contribution of Telestrator. So person who's doing Telestrator is on the device anywhere in the US. System is at our headquarters in Colorado, and you are telestrating a game that's in Arizona. You know, so those are all weird workflows that we're working on. I mean, many mobile unit companies at this point are centralizing graphics, centralizing replay. Let's go a step further than that. What about just leaving people at their houses and having them operate these devices? So I mean, you know, these are all crazy things that we're experimenting with, and stuff that you can get away with some of our clients that you can't necessarily get away with, you know, as soon as you get too high up the food chain, all of a sudden they're not willing to risk as much as your lower clients.
Just a quick comment. Who remembers the picture of Glenn Weiss TDing the Democratic Convention from his house in West LA in 2020 in flip-flops and shorts? Oh yeah, he had a whole setup. I mean, two redundant power sources, 2 redundant, you know, internet connections, everything. But he was still doing it from his house.
See, we're trying to eliminate all that. We want someone to be working on a single monitor that's watching a peered broadcast from a distance over parsec, and he's controlling the entire switcher with a couple of X keys through a USB-C port.
So the requirements of closed captioning, are you doing closed captioning in real time at the location and adding that, and what technology is that?
We are not. No one has asked us to do closed captioning yet. That's another one. What we actually have started getting is discussions about us being able to put SCUDdy commands in. That's actually been more surprising to me than some of the other requests, that they want us to actually insert SCUDdy commands on locations in Dripping Springs, Florida, and all these random. Being able to run ad inserts from a remote location. So they would give us the ad program insert, we would log that into an external device that's attached to our system, and then while we're doing the course of the show, they would be doing live ad insertion at the receiving end. It always makes me nervous when you get too involved in the monetary functions of your clients, but it's come up many, 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 many times. And I think it's something that we're going to be forced to do here in the near future, because one of the other items that's come up recently is alt versions, right? So you're the NBA or you're MLB and you're doing your main broadcast, but you would rather have an alt version in Chinese, an alt version in Spanish, an alt version in Portuguese, with the associated graphics and commercial breaks and things that are appropriate for your audience. So I think that's where a lot of this ad insertion stuff comes from, is, you know, can we run our main broadcast for our main viewership, but can you also run these self-contained, you know, alt versions of it, and at the same time provide, you know, the code that will run the individual advertisements on your particular broadcast stream. So never thought that would be a topic that would come up either, but it's becoming It's
Are you-
gone from a request to a demand.
Are you supporting dual language at the locations now?
Yes, and we've done a number of different events that went out dual language and dual graphics too. Yeah, where we would do one broadcast in English and we would have another alt broadcast with a separate set of talent. We've also done lots of different broadcasts too, where we had two completely different graphics packages. AP&P would have an APP graphics package running, and they would also have an ESPN or a CBS package running. And we would have two physical outputs, one of which would have the APP graphics, one of which would have the ESPN or CNN graphics. Same talent, but a completely different graphics package going to each individual output, still all controlled by one operator who didn't even realize they were doing it on a second output.
Okay, any other questions for Don? All right, Joe.
I just want to compliment you on your ability to do everything you just did, just like ad lib that. That was like incredible. You're like extremely talented and have a great compendium of knowledge.
You're very kind. I started out my career as a floor director and then became a TD, and then I was a director for many, many years before I got into sports. I used to be in TV news for a long, long time. So I think my time as a production specialist and the time that I spent in front of a switcher and working with audio and working with everybody else sort of gives me the overall understanding of how those things work. Maybe not necessarily 1,000%, but as a user, an understanding of how this stuff has to operate for it to be functional and usable in a sports or news production environment. And I think there's a lot of people out there making interesting technology, but they make it in ways that just is completely unsuitable for you to use to produce good content. So it's a real blend of those things, that makes things successful.
Fantastic. All right, thanks everyone. Round of applause for Don.
Thank you very much.
MTVG Group. Thanks. All right. Have a good night.